By the way, I compared it to other civilizations. Looks pretty good. I did a cross correlation of royal and priestly dynasties. Synchronizes very well. Can't make this stuff up. Added in historical events. Makes sense. Synchronized it with archaeological data. Beautiful. I haven't seen archaeological data which has busted this yet. Now, if I take the version of Indian history that I hear from other people, well, this happened 30,000 years ago, and this happened 22,164 years ago. How do we know that? Well, because of astrology or astronomy. I don't buy any of that stuff. I don't find it to be solid at all. This timeline, when I show it to you, you'll see it syncs with itself. It syncs with other civilizations. And I haven't seen anybody break it yet. And I created it when I was about 19, let's say 20, 55. So that's about 35 years. And nobody has really broken it yet. So if you go to my websites, I run a number of websites. So this is my New Dharma Foundation. This is my India History Online website. And if you go to the website and click on Royal Chronology, you can go here and you can click on the icon and you can download this. Now, the spreadsheet is zipped up because it's so large. So if you won't fit on there. So if you look at it on the left-hand side, these are generations. Now it starts with Vivasvata, and then you get to Manu, and then you get the two branches of the family, the solar and lunar dynasty. Now, why is that already generation 88? Is because we have some information. A lot of this is Puranic data that goes before then with different names. It may not be historical. It may not be factual. I do not know. I just put it down there just so that there's kind of, I just wanted to put it in writing and put it in some kind of order. And now, there's a concept of time, that time is both linear and circular. And I think both are factual and very scientific, in my opinion. On a short scale, time is linear because time is actually one of the dimensions of physics, right? As we're moving through taking action, we're measuring time against it. So linear. But has human civilizations gone through cycles of creation and destruction, where civilizations might have been advanced and then they got wiped out for one reason or another and it went back to kind of Stone Age? Yeah, that's happened. So could that have happened more that we don't know about? Sure. We may find out more in the next 100 years. Who knows? So I put this all together in a spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, you'll see these little red corners. These are comments. And the comments sometimes are like a page of data along with sources. So this spreadsheet is, I think, at least 10,000 cells of data. And every one has a generational number, and it has an approximate year based on 25 years per generation. Now, think of it as an accordion. If the generations were actually 22.5 years on average, or 27.9 years on average, then the history would be a little bit shorter, a little bit farther, but not much, not much. We're talking about hundreds of years of wiggle and a span of 6,000 to 7,000 years. So this thing is pretty accurate, and I haven't seen people produce data that really, breaks it. Let me just jump ahead here. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to show you how I built this thing, which was backwards. So I started with me. Okay, I don't actually have a middle name, but I just put one in for fun. This is my father, Shamsundar, my grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather. These are the two who left Rajasthan and went to the eastern part of India in today it'd be called Bihar. And we have a couple generations going back to Mohan Lal. And that's where my name Mohanka comes from. Ka, like descendants of Mohan. Originally, our name was Agrawal. And so this goes back to the period of around 1800. And so that's how I started building the timeline and just built it back and went back generation for generation for generation. And I started reading books, particularly some early books I read 20, 30 years ago from Purushottam Lal Bhargav to build up this history. Now I'm zooming past this really fast because there's actually literally too much information here, but you can go and download the spreadsheet and look at it on your own and see this. And once again, what you'll see, I'll go back here to where it gets kind of interesting, is the start of the kind of famous or named royalty, which would be Emperor Bharata. And this is where you get India being Bharat. And you can see that there was a long line of Puru Bharata kings, or you can call them tribal chieftains, maybe became kings, and then finally he became a king of kings at that period. And then it goes down, and you have a whole, notice there's no gaps here, no gaps, no breaks. You go all the way down to epic number 1, you get Sudas, who's the protagonist, and you can see all the Varshagira battles that happened 1 or 2 generations later. Conflicts continue, let's go down, no gaps, no gaps, no gaps. You get the Ajamid dynasty, keeps going down, and now we get Ram. And notice I'll say Dashrath II. Sometimes in the timeline, I'll say a person's name, and I'll say number 1, number 2, number 3, because these names repeat throughout history. How many Rams and how many Krishnas were there, right? Many, many, many. And people get those confused. Or we talk about priestly families, right? We discussed that in the other talks, right? Vishwamitra, Vashisht, Bhargav, and all these different families descended from Bhrigu. These are family names. It's like my last name, Mohanka. It's a family name. And some of these priestly families have kept their tradition intact for so many generations that you could have a gap of 1,000 or 2,000 years and people are using the same last name, same family name. And they're aligned with a similar dynasty of kings. So the priestly dynasties line up with the royal dynasties. We go from the Ramayana, second epic. You can see these, no gap in the kings here, no gap. And now you can see Mahabharat, which I consider to be the third epic. So this is the epic trilogy. And by the way, you'll see here Brihadbala of Brihadbala in the Mahabharat, who is a descendant, a direct descendant of the people in the Ramayana. So there is a connection. Not only did Mahabharat mention Ramayana, but there's a genealogical connection. There's in the Ramayana some hints of the previous generations going back to the Dasharajni, and the Dasharajni, of course, goes back to the kind of, you can say, the beginning really of the power of the Purva-Bharata dynasty with Emperor Bharata. So everything synchronizes with everything else. When there are royal dynasties who fought with each other and fought wars, those will beautifully work out and be synchronized in the timeline. I didn't make this stuff up. I just wrote down what I read, and it works out beautifully. If somebody wants to say that this is garbage and show that's wrong, prove it. Prove it. I've been saying that for 30 plus years. Prove it. And I don't have people come back with specific information which can break this. What people have done, which is ridiculous, is they'll say, I have the date of one event. Who cares? Who cares if you have the date of one event? Give me the continuity. Give me the continuous history. Tell me everything that happened before that event, during that event, and after that event. And it better synchronize with everything else. And it better line up with archaeological data, because if it doesn't make any sense. And I don't know why you would care. But that's the kind of stuff I get. And then we go down from the Mahabharat, and then we go down here, and we get the Buddhist period coming up here. We got Mahavir, we get Buddha, First Council of Buddhism. We go down here, we get Emperor Ashok, we get, keep going down, Kushan Empire. I mean, there's just no gap in Indian history. There's always something going on somewhere in India. It's always been a very, very populous area, full of civilization, lots of activity. You get the Islamic invasions, raids of Mahmud of Ghazni, Nalanda University destroyed. You get kind of coming up soon here, Vijayanagar Empire. Then you'll get the Mughal Empire, and kind of parallel with the Mughal Empire is the rise of Shisha Dharma, Sikhism. And then you get the Europeans do some trade and then make some incursions. And then you get the modern era. Now, there's so much information I had in these initial 10 columns here that I couldn't fit it all. So what I started doing is sliding over to the right-hand side, and I still had more data. So I went further and went further and went further. Okay. So, I mean, what you're seeing here is, like I said, around 10,000 plus cells of data, many of which have comments, each which are a page. So there's a lot more than, like 100 books worth of data inside this thing. In addition to this, I also put a tab for history of religions where I showed how things are kind of tied together. And this was highlighted by the other speakers you had earlier, talking about the Vedic and Dasharaj and how it was a priestly split, with the Indian side winning. And we had Devas, and we had the Soma ceremony. And then the Western branch had, they couldn't pronounce, the Persians can't pronounce S. So they don't say Sapta Sindhu, they say Hapta Hindu. They couldn't pronounce Sindhu River, so they call it Hindu. So it became Hindu River. All the people living and beyond it are Hindustan. It's Hindu people. That's where you get the word Hinduism. It's actually Sanatan Dharma. But anyhow, so the language we get, and we have the split of the priests. And so on this side, you get Zoroastrianism, and it had an influence on the Jews because obviously they were held in captivity by Persians. We all know that. And you get concepts of the Buddhist missionaries, which Conrad Else did some good work on. You get the Trinity, and you can see the whole history. So the world is very much related, and there's been a lot of cross-fertilization of ideas. I put together kind of a spreadsheet of world religions, kind of describing them on standard parameters. What's the population growth trend? When is it founded? What's the theistic practice, etc. I even put a couple of things for Indian festivals.